The phrase that I like the most in Chinese is 糟糕,我怎么办? And in English that kind of translates to terrible, what should I do, or what do I do now? And I remember when I first read it in the text, I just thought it sounded really cool, and I feel like it really just captures like 糟糕, terrible, what should I do? And it's just very expressive, and so yeah, I just really like that phrase.
A phrase in Japanese I'd like to share with you is itachi no saigoppe, which literally means a weasel's last fart. And it's supposed to refer to an act done in desperation, and I leave it up to your generous imagination to try to figure out why that's the case.
I spent some time in Russia this summer, and one funny phrase that they always say when you go to the bathhouse there, the banya, is "sirokin parum," which literally means with easy sweat, but it's kind of just like sweat easy, relax, have a good time, and I just thought it's a funny and interesting phrase.
On arriving at the campus, I found one expression really useful, which is, where is the library? In Chinese, we say, 图书馆在哪? And in Spanish, it's, ¿Dónde está la biblioteca?
My favorite word is kummerspeck. It stems from the word Liebeskummer, which is the sadness that you experience when you're in love, and usually when it's not going very well. And so kummerspeck is literally translated to be upset fat, and it means the fat that you gain when you're in love and it's not going very well. And I just think it's hilarious because it's kind of like love handles, but more literal, more like upset about being in love and eating a lot and gaining weight because of it.
The word I think I like the most is mwadhafa, because it means employee, and I think it's pretty funny that it's so different from the English word we have for employee.
I really like the phrase tomber dans les pommes, which in French basically means to faint. I learned that phrase when I was like 7 or 8 years old. I was growing up in Montreal, and I thought it was like the most hilarious thing ever, which it's not. Like, people fainting should be really scary, but literally translated it means falling into apples, so every time I heard that I would start laughing.
The word that I like in Spanish is chévere. It's a word for cool that's used in Puerto Rico and Cuba and other places in South America. And I like it because it's an African-derived word, and as opposed to other words that mean cool in like Spain, where they use guay, in parts of Mexico, and the United States where they use padre. Sounds a little bit like someone's dad or something, so I like using chévere for solidarity.
A phrase I really like in Japanese is nekojita, which literally means cat tongue, and refers to people who have trouble eating or drinking really hot things. And I kind of like it because I'm one of those people.
So one High German word that I like is doch, which means it's a sort of response sound that you can give when someone asks you a question that implies a state of affairs that is incorrect. So if someone says, if I say I was out dancing last night, and they say, oh well, you must be exhausted this morning. That doch, I feel great. So it's a word that in English it would take a lot of words to say no, on the contrary, something like this. But in German it's just a sort of a sound that you make that conveys all that meaning.
My favorite Chinese words are animal names. So for example, 松鼠 means a squirrel, but literally translated it would be pine tree rat. And then there's other rats, so there's 袋鼠, which means kangaroo, which is a pocket rat, and 老鼠 means an old rat, which is, I guess, mouse. But yeah, I just think these literal translations are really funny because they're so vivid compared to the English names.
A really interesting feature of Arabic that I don't think a lot of people know is that in Arabic you can take a 3-letter root and make tens of words from it. For example, the sounds ka, ta, ba, those 3 consonants can make kataba, which means to write, katib, which means writer, kitaba, which means writing, kutab, which means writers, maktab, which means desk. So you take the 3 consonants and you can put them in all these different patterns with different vowels in between them and make tens of words that all relate to writing.
My favorite word in Russian is toska, which Vladimir Nabokov described as a feeling of anguish, intangible, often, sometimes a longing for something that's far away or long lost.
My favorite word in German is Fremdschämen because it means secondhand embarrassment, and it's a word we don't have in English that I think is really useful.
My word is esperanza, which means hope in Spanish. I chose it just because it's really fun to say and it's beautiful, and I think it's a really powerful word.
My favorite German word is Wolkenkratzer, which literally translates to cloud scratcher, but actually means skyscraper.
My favorite phrase in French is poser un lapin, and translated directly, that basically means to leave a rabbit, and I chose it because it's a really funny way. It actually means to stand someone up.
I enjoy the word 累, which means tired, because it's composed of two radicals, which mean field and fine silk. So not only is it an essential vocabulary word, but it's also like really optimistic, because like I may be tired now, but soon I'll be on a field of fine silk.
The word or phrase that I really like that we've learned is the word senpai, which is kind of like something that would go after someone's name, like Tanaka senpai, Kyle senpai, which basically just means that they are a mentor or someone you look up to. And I really like it because it's like there's not really something as succinct in English that means that. And I also really like the way it's used for like a lot of comedic effect, often in anime, and the concept of senpai notice me, which is a common joke in anime.
One of my favorite French expressions is c'est la fin des haricots, which means it's the end of the green beans. So the English equivalent would be that's the final straw, but the French use green beans instead.
My favorite German word is Durchschnitt. Literally it means to cut through. Durch means through, Schnitt means to cut. I like that because it's a very literal but also visual word. To cut right through means to find the average down the middle.
The word I chose is zanahoria because it means carrot, and I think that's fun to say.
My favorite phrase is raison d'être, which is reason to be. It was the first phrase that I encountered in French, in a French novel, or in anything that I thought was interesting.
My favorite German word is Schildkröte because it means an English turtle, but it actually literally translates to frog with a shield.
I really like the phrase shitsureshimasu, which means I commit a rudeness, and it's essentially a way of saying goodbye to your teacher, and it really shows the importance of honorifics and hierarchy and respectfulness in Japanese culture.
One of my favorite German phrases is nicht alle Tassen im Schrank. It literally translates to not having all your cups in the cupboard, but it means the same things as you've lost your marbles in English.
One phrase I think is really fun is pauvre petit pêcheur, prendre patience pour pouvoir prendre plusieurs petits poissons. And that means, poor little fisherman, have patience so that you can catch several little fish.
My favorite word right now is 12. It means 12, the number 12 in German. And I think it's a really cool word, and it's spelled Z-W-O-L-F with two dots on top of the O, which is called an umlaut. So it's 12.
And one of the phrases I like the most in Chinese is 多说多听多读多写, and people use it in the context of Chinese learning, and what it means is like when it comes to learning Chinese, listen a lot, speak a lot, read a lot, write a lot, and I don't think there's any simpler way of saying what's the best way of studying languages.